we'd like to acknowledge that this podcast is being performed on the Toronto traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabeg, the Huron-Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit.
And we'd also like to acknowledge that this podcast is being filmed on the traditional Miami lands of the Tequesta peoples and the Miccosukee peoples. We highly encourage you to check out and learn more about these Indigenous groups. They're fascinating. Thank you very much and enjoy the podcast.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Cross Continent Chats. On this episode, we've got a lot to cover. My name is Charlie Weyman. I am from Miami, Florida, and I am joined by my friend and co-host, Rachael Bishop from Toronto, Ontario. Let's get right to it. After 22 seasons, the man, the myth, the legend, Vince Carter, is retiring from the NBA. Unfortunately, this is not the way he wanted to go out, but considering what's going on, he figured he'd call it quits and hang up his sneakers. Now, he's played for a lot of teams. He's also incredibly famous for winning the slam dunk contest for the Toronto Raptors, arguably the best slam dunk contest of all time. Number 15, Vince Carter. But he's played for a variety of teams, including, of course, the Atlanta Hawks recently, and at some point the New Jersey Nets, when New Jersey had a team. So out of all of the teams he's played for, he's a journeyman player. Which team is most likely to retire his jersey number?
That's a very good question. I actually wrote down New Jersey Nets, but of course you reminded me they moved to Brooklyn, and he never played for the Brooklyn Nets. He played for the New Jersey Nets. So I was going to say them, but now since he didn't actually play for Brooklyn, I'm going to change my pick to the Toronto Raptors. Even though he ended on a really sour note with the team, a lot of that seems to be water under the bridge for the organization, at least. Not for some fans, but they'll get over it. And even just from personal experience, I ended up being at what was his final game of his career in Toronto. It was supposed to be his penultimate game, but then his second game got canceled because of coronavirus. So I was at what ended up being his final game in Toronto earlier this year, back in February. Feels like a lifetime ago now. And the reception he got was absolutely amazing. So it seems like time really has healed those wounds for fans. Fans are still very glad to see him. He got really big cheers every time he was on the court. Every time he got a basket against the Raptors, he got lots of cheers. So he's still clearly very beloved in Toronto, and he's the reason why a lot of Canadian kids took up basketball. Vince sanity was a really big thing. He played for the Raptors longer than he played for any team in his career, so 7 seasons with the Raptors. His numbers with New Jersey were slightly better at 23.6 points per game. With the Raptors, he had 23.4 points per game, but it's still way above what he did with any other team. His career points per game is 16. And as I mentioned before, just what he did for the team, for really basketball in Canada, he is the reason why so many kids grew up playing basketball because they'd watch Vince Carter. And as you said, do those crazy dunks. He basically has arguably the greatest dunk of all time, the dunk contest. He's kind of popularized that and wasn't the most, and he did, of course, have his ups and downs, and he did leave on bad terms, but he was a very beloved Raptor while he was here. So I do think probably the Raptors, just because of what he meant for the franchise and because he played with them for so long. But that being said, I don't think the Raptors will retire his jersey first. I think that the first jersey that they're going to retire is Kyle Lowry. So Vince Carter might have to wait a bit to get his number retired by the Raptors, just because even though Carter is a better player than Kyle Lowry really has been the quintessential Raptor, and he's arguably the most beloved Raptor in Raptor history, really. He's really was the first player to want to stay with the team. Toronto had a history of players leaving: Vince Carter, Chris Bosh, Tracy McGrady, right? The list goes on and on of players who wanted to leave. And Kyle Lowry actually stayed there and helped the team win a championship. And now he's not the best player, but he's always very, he's very feisty, and he clearly loves Toronto, and he's really done a lot for the city. So I think that Vince Carter will get I think that the Raptors are the most likely team to do it for Vince Carter, but I do think he's going to have to wait a few years because Kyle Lowry will be first for the Raptors.
Cool. As a Miami Heat fan, thank you very much for Chris Bosh. Fun fact that if the draft kind of worked out the way it did, the Toronto Raptors also could have had Shaquille O'Neal. We were very happy to have Diesel Shaquille O'Neal in 2006. I just kind of had to put that in there. All right. I love it. Kyle Lowry, just to go on that really quick, Kyle Lowry is one of the most inconsistent players I've ever seen in my life.
Yes, he is.
He's incredibly inconsistent, but you know what? He is a player that you've heard me criticize and rip on and how he doesn't show up in the playoffs half the time. But you know what? He's got so much heart that he puts into the Raptors. And while it was amazing to see him and his bromance with DeMar DeRozan when they were here. Mm-hmm. But even though as soon as they dumped DeMar and they brought in Kawhi, I knew that you guys were going to go and you guys were going to be – that was a way better upgrade. Of course, then Marc Gasol, one of my famous predictions of all time. I told you, Rachel, that they would win the title that year when they got Marc Gasol, and well, they did.
Yes, you did.
So, with that, Kyle Lowry, he definitely deserves it. He's a player who's Raptor through and through. He's got a lot of heart. He puts his heart and soul into the team. So he definitely deserves it. Good job, Kyle. Next question. We're going to dive into a little bit of the ecology world, and what I would consider an evil evil tech giant. Amazon has teamed up with the NHL to construct the Climate Pledge Arena for, you name it, the new Seattle team. This arena is the greenest arena in the world. Beats any European soccer stadium, beats LEED certified buildings like the American Airlines Arena in Miami. It is the first net zero carbon certified arena in the world. So what first net zero carbon means is essentially there is no carbon footprint to this entire arena. I don't know how they're going to do it, but it's really exciting, and it's an amazing future with that. Zero carbon footprint, zero emissions. That is what they're going for. Now, with this new trend, this is going to be a trend. What should older hockey arenas like the Nassau Coliseum, which the Islanders still use because the Brooklyn Arena, the Barclays Center, is terrible for hockey. I personally went there and it was awful. Obviously, a legendary arena like TD Garden, or the Staples Center in LA. Do you think these arenas are going to follow this trend, and how would that even be possible?
Well, just to first of all clear up some stuff about Amazon. So Amazon is teaming up with the NHL, but the name Amazon and the logo won't actually appear on the arena at all, which is kind of interesting. So they don't really have naming rights. They're just kind of partnering with them in a way, essentially. And just more about what the arena is planning on doing. It's the first arena to ban single-use plastics and commit to zero functional waste. So when I did some research on this, and there'll be no garbage cans at all in the building, only recycling and green bin, which is awesome. So compost, and it will be the first arena to offset the carbon emissions of all events and related transportation by fans, sports teams, and entertainers, achieving carbon neutral operations and use. It will also be 100% solar paneled, and any single-use plastics that they have will be phased out by 2024. And they're hoping to just have aluminum and reusable water bottles. It will also have rainwater, which is pretty awesome as well. And the Zamboni as well will be totally electric. So zero emissions. I never realized that Zambonis weren't electric, but it makes sense that they would use gasoline now that you think about it. So that's pretty cool as well. So just some more information about that. So just to answer now your question, so the Climate Pledge Arena was formerly known as Key Arena, And in fact, it's an old arena. It was initially built for the Century 21 Exposition, the World Fair, in 1962. And it's gone through
That's right.
several extensive renovations, but the original roof will still be used. So it's still going to be the original shell of the building. So in fact, there really is no reason why Madison Square Gardens cannot do this, especially since it's undergone extensive renovations. In fact, MSG, Madison Square Garden, is 2 years newer than the Seattle Arena. So it wasn't built until 1964, and it's undergone extensive renovations over the years. And Nassau Coliseum was built in 1972. So again, it's newer arenas, and they're also renovating that extensively as well. So if this Climate Pledge arena ends up working, which it sounds like it's a good plan, but a lot to actually follow through, as you said, I see no reason why Madison Square Garden and Nassau Coliseum cannot follow in this suit and cannot be zero emission as much as they can. Madison Square Garden is a bit trickier in the fact that it's in a building complex with Penn Station that's on top of a train station. So it's not the only arena. It's not the only, like, it's not just a single standing arena. So that is a bit trickier because there's other things in that complex. It's not just it by itself. That would be harder. But Nassau Coliseum, especially with all the renovations happening right now, there would be no reason why Nassau cannot fix the roof like that, and it would probably extend the shelf life of the arena as well.
So thank you for that, Rachel. Thank you for your really descriptive and your details about this. A couple things I wanted to talk about is, even though a Zamboni that is electric sounds fantastic, and I kind of agree with you that it's a lot better, and it's weird because I always thought they were electric, not actually gas or diesel or anything like that. But for me, the concern is the power source. So of course, electric, you have to charge it. So if you're charging it from a power source that is taking energy from coal, you're still kind of contributing to the fossil fuels issue. A lot of people overlook this. A lot of people think that if you just buy a Tesla, that you're totally green. That's not fully the case, because you're still using coal energy to power your car. It's just not directly powering your car. And with that, I want to talk about kind of the garbage and the trash. It's fantastic that there's no garbage and it's all green and it's recyclable, and they got rid of single-use plastic, and that's awesome. But I think it's also to encourage people to bring their own bags and take the trash with them. I think that's something that they should really look at, where you're encouraging everybody, instead of just dumping the trash in the arena, take it with you, and then you just dispose of it at home. It's almost like you're taking a 6-pack of beer to the beach, and you've got a few things left, and you have it in your cooler, and you're going to take your cooler back home, right? So it's the same thing to me, where I would encourage folks to bring their own stuff. Obviously, alcohol is a little bit different, but bring their own materials. Bring the stuff they're going to use, whether it's a fork or a reusable straw, whatever it is. Bring their stuff, but then take it with them, and just reduce the action of throwing it away in the arena itself. And I think that's where they could really hit this whole zero carbon footprint. I think that would be really cool.
The problem with bringing your own stuff is, especially forks, that's not going to be allowed because that'd be considered a weapon. So, especially with all the security, it would, especially now we have metal detectors at arenas that changed after the Manchester bombing. We got metal detectors in arenas, right? So that would not be allowed in.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily like a metal fork. They have forks out of bamboo. They have cutlery sets out of bamboo. They have it out of basswood. They have it out of, they have it out of hard plastic. It doesn't necessarily have to be metal. I can definitely see what you mean, because you can definitely use it as a shank or something like that. But I think something in terms of just at least taking the garbage with you is, I think, something that people need to really get behind, not just in arenas, but all over the world.
And
But
why? Sorry, just
yes,
why is that better than putting it in a recycling bin at an arena?
because you're reducing the amount of potential waste in the arena.
Okay.
That, as well as there's always error. So let's say you totally fill up a recycling bin and it's overflowing because there was a lack of a maintenance issue. And then there's stuff all over the floor. And then somebody else has to clean it up. And then it might not, and that person who cleans it up might not exactly put it in the right place. So it leaves more for error. But if you take it with you and if you're, at least somewhat environmentally conscious, taking a cup with you, it's a souvenir because it could have some sweet logo on it or
Mm-hmm.
something.
Mm-hmm.
And you could also, and you could reuse it at arenas. Imagine having a plastic Toronto Maple Leafs cup that you just take with you every time, and you can fill
Mm-hmm.
it up with beer or
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want,
Mm-hmm. That's
and you
okay.
just
That
take
makes
it with
sense.
you.
That makes sense.
And then you just take it with you, and then you go home and wash it, or you go home and throw it out, whatever you want to do.
Uh,
um
Actually, at
yes.
Glastonbury Music Festival in the last version of it in the UK last year. So it's a really big music festival in the cornfield in the UK. They actually did that where they basically weren't giving out plastic water bottles anymore. They basically just selling reusable water bottles, and they basically said there's no waste. So basically, you're taking all the garbage that you bring in. So whatever you bring out, you're taking it. Whatever you bring in, you're taking it back out with you. And apparently, it was a really
Exactly.
big success.
They actually do the same thing at Burning Man and also regional burns. There's a big one in Miami called the Love Burn Music Festival, and they do the exact same thing. They've been doing that for years, where they encourage you to take your trash with you, and to be responsible for it. But let's move on, because I could literally go that for hours, and I don't want to bore the viewers. So, um, well, it's happened again. Once again, there are more abuse cases coming out in the NHL. But this time, it's a former WHL player who is saying that they were sexually and physically abused during their time in the WHL. Um, this person was on two different teams, and now with this, I don't think it's only a coaches or a coaching staff. I don't think it's only that, but I think at some point you're going to have to clean house in upper management, because who are the people hiring these coaches? Who are the people hiring this staff? Coaches recommend, of course, but I think will the Dub or the WHL have to appropriately clean house in upper management to deal and create a change in male hockey culture?
It's a very good question. It's definitely a loaded question, and it's unfortunate we have to keep talking about this, but it keeps happening. So, unfortunately, this is a systemic issue across junior hockey. It's not just the Western Hockey League. And actually, just a couple of days ago, the Canadian Hockey League, which is the umbrella organization encompassing of major junior hockey in Canada. So that's the Western Hockey League, the Ontario Hockey League, and the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. The Canadian Hockey League itself has now announced an independent panel just to get to the bottom of this to figure out why this is happening. And Daniel Costello, he's in the news again. He's actually leading a class action lawsuit against the CHL, arguing physical abuse. So he claimed when he was a rookie in Sarnia, he experienced a lot of hazing, um, locked in a bathroom, and forced to do things with broomsticks and things like that. We won't get into too much detail, but a lot of basically sexual and physical assault things, as part of hazing, as it were. But again, this is an issue that dates back decades, right? It's really the OHL has cleared this up, and I haven't heard really of any incidences happening in the last 15 years, which is 10, 15 years, which is good. 10 years probably, but it has been a big issue across junior hockey. And we've seen this in university hockey too. I remember the year before I got to Dalhousie, the women's hockey team was suspended for the whole season because of hazing incidents involving a rookie, right? With the rookie party. So women's hockey, you don't hear about that very often, but women do it too. The Dalhousie rugby team was suspended for doing that. It's happened in the NCAA level. So it's not just a junior hockey issue. It really is more of a sports issue, but it seems to be worse in hockey. And so really, I think that honestly, there needs to be total reform. We need to have more awareness starting all the way from up top, the owners and management, all the way down to the players. We need to have better training, more sensitivity training, better training with things like this, staff, and then so they might have to look internally and do a total house clean if these things keep happening and if, there's still incidences, because it seems as though every time this happens, it's the same people in charge and it doesn't get fixed, right? So it's status quo. So I think there should be something that needs to clean house, but I don't think this is an easy fix. As I mentioned, this has been going on for decades. I'm thinking back to, what is it, 3 decades ago now, with the whole Graham James, Theo Fleury, and Sheldon Kennedy case in junior hockey in the WHL, actually, and with the Swift Current Broncos, I believe it was that team. So this is not something that's new. So I'm not surprised it's come up, but I definitely think that it's going to take a lot of looking inside, and it's really mostly, I think, too, it comes down to a lot of hockey culture. And I don't want to get too much into this, but I think a lot of it does have to do with the whole concept of, toxic masculinity that we hear about a lot these days, because that's what a lot of hockey culture is. And so I think a lot of it is ingrained. So I think it will not be an easy fix for sure, but I think it starts at the top and looking internally and starting with these reviews and reforms, and then, cleaning house eventually and hopefully changing the way we look at hockey. But I don't think that's going to be something that happens soon. That's going to be something decades down the line.
Honestly, those are my thoughts exactly. It's definitely going to take time, but it's the people hiring and the people that are just taking over, that have been taking over and controlling everything. I think, even an adverse effect to this might not necessarily be related to, these serious issues, but old boys clubs like the
That's
Edmonton
exactly what I
Oilers,
was going to say. Old boys club.
they can change, and they can actually turn the franchise into a positive direction. Even though, to be honest, I've kind of quite enjoyed the Oilers being still bad because they're really funny. But
and sorry, Edmonton Oilers fans too.
Yeah, you guys have an awesome logo, and of course, your history is really cool. But this could be that could be an adverse effect where there's hockey teams where they're run by an old boys club and they just want to bask in their glory days. And I think that could also be a positive adverse effect to just bring in new personnel into the league to diversify the league potentially.
I think that you're right about that, and I think that it really does come down to a lot of old boys club, a lot of status quo. The CHL commissioner has been the same for 2 or 3 decades, so nothing's going to get changed if it's the same people in charge at the top, right? And they're not fixing anything. So
Okay, so viewers, I've been really looking forward to this next question because I'm sure if you followed the pods and you've been loyal to us, I like Liverpool FC. So finally, Liverpool FC have ended their 30-year drought of winning England's top prize. And they didn't win it on the field, funny enough. They won it because Chelsea did us a solid and beat Manchester City 2-1 at Stamford Bridge, thus making it mathematically impossible for Manchester City to win the league. Well, it was kind of obvious Liverpool were going to win it anyway, but it's even better. And this is magical. You could see interviews with players like Jordan Henderson, obviously manager Jurgen Klopp, totally in tears and doing this for the fans. Definitely stick towards the end of this podcast. Please watch the end. I know the credits are boring, but you're gonna want to watch this. We've added something special to it that I think will really match the occasion. So after all of this success, they've won the Champions League, they've won the English Premier League. Jurgen Klopp is the first manager to win the Champions League and the Premier League in 2 years. And what is next for Klopp's Reds? Should they spend big in the transfer window? Should they grow from within? What's their next goal?
this is a great question. So from my understanding, Jurgen Klopp has not been huge on spending lots of money in the transfer window, and that's kind of what my mindset would be too as well. Especially since Liverpool has a lot of really good young kids who are ready or close to ready, and we saw glimpses of them in this Premier League championship run with Nico Williams and Harvey Elliott, 2 teenagers getting in some time, and then there's also Rian Brewster, who's pretty young as well, on loan to Swansea in the Championship, and he's done quite well as well. And then, of course, Liam Miller, the Canadian, who spent some time on loan in Scotland to Kilmarnock, who's only 20. So there's a lot of kids in the system, and Curtis Jones has spent some time on the team as well. That's another guy that I have noticed. So if it was me, I would focus on, for the rest of the season, breaking Manchester City's record of 100 points in one season with 7 games left is definitely possible and very likely if the Liverpool continues on its trajectory. And I would just basically try to break every Manchester City record, because why not? And before spending internationally, I would try to look at spending from within. There's going to be some players who leave this offseason, like Adam Lallana, Xherdan Shaqiri. They're probably both going to be gone. So I would look internally at some of the young kids and see who's ready or close to ready, and see how you can replace them with these young kids. And they've already gotten some experience at this level, and they got some League Cup experience as well. So I would look internally first before thinking about spending lots of money in the transfer window, because I don't think it makes a lot of sense to break the bank and spend lots of money and buy players as other teams do when you want to develop and draft players, especially, kids that Harvey Elliott, he's a longtime Liverpool supporter, and you want to have these kids that you've drafted that you want to develop and see what they can be before you go out and spend lots of money. So this is what I would do if I was Jurgen Klopp. Obviously, I'm not, so he knows more than me, but I feel like that's the kind of thing he would do. And I know that he says a lot of these kids are ready or close to ready, so that'd be my course of action.
No, that's really cool. Another really notable player that that you forgot to mention was Harry Wilson.
Oh, that's right. That's right. On Bournemouth. Sorry.
Yeah, I think he's the next player ready to stay. So you take out Xherdan Shaqiri, which it sucks. I'm a big fan of Big Shaq, but
so am I.
But Harry Wilson is like a next natural fit. He scored 7 goals on a relegation team in Bournemouth, which is very impressive. And so I think he's the next to just stay there permanently, have a permanent spot in the first team. But I think Liverpool also has some defensive issues. Yes, you have Virgil van Dijk, who's a monster. But they don't have a center back that's elite, that's, as at a level as Virgil van Dijk.
Mm-hmm.
You do have that you do have that potentially with, of course, Kijana Hover,
that's right,
Seth Vandenberg from Holland. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's a lot more kids that I didn't mention.
Yes, yeah, they have an amazing group of kids, but I think they need to bring in a player. One player that I would like to see in mind is Kalidou Koulibaly. He is a young player that is in the Italian league right now, and he is such a beast. He's like a Virgil van Dijk, but like 5 years younger. He's really good, and I would love to see him take the spot next to Virgil van Dijk. And I think they have to do a little bit spending to address the needs. I think they also are going to have to take a look at their backup goalkeeper, because even though Adrian plays a beautiful, flamboyant Spanish style of goalkeeping, this is soccer, not hockey. I don't think he fits the bill. I think they're going to have to go for another keeper, or perhaps Loris Karius, after his disastrous Champions League, is ready to, be a solid and capable backup. I think that's going to be a problem, because if Alisson is hurt, it's a huge problem.
Doesn't the team have 2 young kids, though, that they're developing that could potentially fill in?
Yes, they do. But the other thing with these kids is that it might be good, instead of going straight from the Liverpool under 23s to Premier League, is that they go on a loan deal, that they go to the Championship, they go to League One, they go to Germany. They go to other places just for them to get a little more experience that's not under 23s, because the gap between pro and under 23 is actually considerable.
That makes sense.
So it might be maybe a year before they're ready for Premier League, in my opinion.
Okay.
But who knows? Some might impress and be amazing. Because it's already played in the Premier League. So
because the third goalie for Liverpool has played in some games, from what I can remember, the Irish guy.
Yes. Keller has,
That's right.
but I believe it was FA Cup. It was not the Barclays Premier League.
No, it wasn't. It was FA Cup, but he still played on the first team with Liverpool, so he still got some experience, right?
Yes, he definitely did get some experience, for sure. But I just don't think he's ready to handle the Premier League just yet, because you do have to, on a regular basis, constantly face players like, I don't know, Tammy Abraham, Sergio Aguero. The list could go on.
Harry Kane.
Yeah, if Harry Kane can stay healthy, they definitely have a lot of that's tough competition. So um, I think he needs a loan. I think a lot of them just need a loan deal. Liverpool buy some, relatively cheap players that are reliable. Maybe spend big once on Koulibaly, but that's my dream. But no, I like the idea of trying to look, really taking a hard look at within the system.
Okay, so then I have a question for you. If you get Koulibaly to Virgil van Dijk, who does he replace on defense?
Well, Dejan Lovren is probably on his way out.
He's bad. He's bad.
Yeah, he's definitely declined.
He's old.
Joel Matip is a good player, but he has health issues every year. But he's not elite. The other player who's quite good, but he's just not an elite defender. He could be a regular, but is Joe Gomez. Joe Gomez is a good player. Don't get me wrong; he's young, but I don't think he's ever. He's not going to reach the level of Virgil van Dijk. So I think you need to bring in a more talented player and have Joe Gomez more of a sub. I know I hate to say it, but he's also very injury prone.
He is injury prone.
That is the other thing that's concerning is the defense. So Australia and New Zealand are going to host the 2023 Women's World Cup of soccer. And if you really look, it's actually not hard to look at, but if you really look at the COVID-19 track record, please don't look at the United States. I don't need to be reminded of that. The COVID-19 track record in those countries, especially New Zealand, with one of my favorite leaders in Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister, has been incredibly impressive and managed beautifully. In New Zealand, they have maybe 2 cases of coronavirus in the entire country, which is like absolutely fantastic. They are basically COVID free, zero, no rise in cases. They're amazing, and I wish I was there right now. So, due to the terrible action by the U.S. and definitely the direction that everything is going, do you think major sporting events are going to be moved out of the U.S. due to health concerns? Maybe COVID or possibly even the future if we get another pandemic of some sort. Society is changing their hygiene due to COVID-19. So perhaps they're going to go out of countries that are more prone. That's what I'm trying to get at is more countries that are more prone to not handling viruses properly. What do you think?
That's a great question. But ultimately, I don't think major sporting events will be moved out of the United States. The United States is the world's 3rd largest country via population, albeit it's a lot smaller than the first 2, India and China, but it still has a population of 330 million people. So that's a lot of dollars at the end of the day. And that's ultimately what these organizations and these associations care about, is bringing in the money. So I think that ultimately, and the U.S. not only has a big population, it has lots of money. So it has the money to build infrastructure and to host these major events. And Americans love sports, so it definitely has a support system to want to have these types of things. So it has money to build venues. It has money for infrastructure. We're seeing the U.S. is going to co-host the 2026 FIFA World Cup with Canada and Mexico. Most of the games will be played in the United States, and the United States already has all these venues ready to go, and they can monitor them easily if needed. So ultimately, I don't think that we'll see events moved out of the United States just because you need that money. You might see more events moved into Australia and New Zealand, but I don't think the US will lose events because of this.
Okay, cool. No, that's good. That's good. It's definitely hard to think of the light at the end of the tunnel with this. And I think you're being very hopeful and very positive with U.S. improving themselves and on their own infrastructure. because they just signed a $750 billion army budget. Yay! So, with that, I really hope that they do that and improve their infrastructure and they really take care of these guidelines because, I feel that the U.S. is not really spending the money in the right place. It'd be nice if they focus more on education and healthcare.
Let's
To
not get
really
into that
change
too
the
much, though.
No, of course, but to really change, because I would like to change the reputation that the American people have right now. Um, anyway, that's a really good question, and with that, that is the end of our question portion, and we're going to go into our segments. So, without further ado, sports spectacles this week. So we're going to start with Barclays Premier League. First, on Wednesday, July 1st, one that I really want to look at that is really interesting is Everton and Leicester City.
Ooh.
Everton is a team that is not doing so well right now. They're in 13th place. But before, they were in relegation until they hired a world-class manager and a legend in Carlo Ancelotti. And now they have risen themselves up to 13th. Sure, it's not the greatest, but at least they're not going to be relegated. But as you can see with the recent Merseyside derby against now champions Liverpool, Everton can hold their own. They play well. Their defensive style is pretty good. They've got a lot of particularly Seamus Coleman, their Irish defenseman, is really, really talented. He's old, but he's still got enough gas in the tank. Now let's look at Leicester. Leicester's exciting. They're under their manager Brendan Rodgers. He used to be at Liverpool, and he's really taken into his own. That team is really exciting. I really like their midfielder James Maddison. He is really talented, and I really hope he doesn't leave Leicester because I would hate him to go to another, a Manchester United. That would really suck. So that is Everton, Leicester. Everton can hold their own against the top team in the league. I think they're going to hold their own against Leicester, and I think it's going to be a 1-0. I'm going to go for it, a 1-0 Everton win.
Oh.
Which is, it's not going to happen, but you know what? I'm going for it. Now, let's look at the next day, Thursday. Well, Liverpool, the new champions, are facing off the former champions, Manchester City. Well, that one's going to be a banger, and it's going to be exciting. There's no Sergio Aguero. Liverpool's fully healthy now because Mohamed Salah and Andy Robertson are back. Well, what's interesting about this is that since Liverpool's got the title wrapped up, they might play their young players and they might give their substitutes more playing time because, hey, they've won. So it'll be interesting to see what Jurgen Klopp does. I really hope he still kind of puts the pedal to the metal. I really like to see their recent signing in Takumi Minamino get his first goal. He was so close in the last game to get one, and he just deserves it, and that's what that kid needs. He's a really good player. He's really talented. So check that out on Thursday. Also on Thursday is a really good game in Italy in Serie A. It is Atalanta versus Napoli. Napoli is a very defensive team. They've got an incredible amount of talent. But Atalanta has really proven themselves in the top four in the Italian league. It's going to be a battle for whoever hits Champions League spot, and it's also going to be a battle for more money in that league. Now, I want to go into Friday. Oh, I'm sorry, not Friday. I would like to go into Saturday. This is going to be my last one. A really interesting one. Wolverhampton Wanderers and Arsenal. Finally, Arsenal won a game. They won against Southampton, but they won a game. They won 2-0. And I really think that they have the ability to beat Wolves. Wolves is awesome. I've greatly enjoyed how they play, but I think Arsenal's going to take it. This win, I think, is going to charge them to. It's going to be low scoring, probably 1-0, and Arsenal will take Wolverhampton. But definitely check that one out. Definitely check out another A few other ones. Also, if you like Championship, Derby and Nottingham Forest is going to be a very interesting one as well. Now let's dive into the transfers. Transfers, purchases, trades, anything that's currently happening. So let's check in with Rachael in the marketplace.
This is not so much a marketplace situation as it is more of a lack of marketplace situation. So basically on Friday, June 26th, the NHL held its draft lottery. So this was where all the teams, in this year, it's all 8 teams who are not in the NHL play-in for a chance to make the playoffs. All 8 teams whose seasons are already over were entered into the lottery. And Detroit, being the worst team this season, had the best chance of getting the number 1 overall pick. Ottawa, having hold two picks in the draft, their own pick, and San Jose's pick, had the best combined odds. However, in true NHL fashion, this draft lottery was complete chaos. Detroit dropped all the way to 4th, so that means they won't be picking until 4th. Ottawa got 3rd and 5th, which is hilarious for Maple Leafs fans. And LA got 2nd, which means the first overall pick went to a team that is to be determined in true NHL fashion. It went to a team that is going to be one of the losers of the 8 of the play-in round, so a team that does not win its play-in series, so they're technically eliminated from the playoffs if they have a chance to make the playoffs, so they're mediocre. So this means that if the Toronto Maple Leafs or Pittsburgh Penguins or Florida Panthers loses its play-in series, those teams, which are already stacked with superstar talent, have a chance to draft Alexis Lafreniere. Can you just imagine Alexis Lafreniere making sweet, sweet music alongside Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, 2 guys who played for Rimouski Oceanic, not to mention Chris Letang. He'd have his French-Canadian buddy, and the Penguins would be set up for years, decades to come, once their big 3 retires. Or let's see Alexis Lafreniere with the Leafs. Him alongside Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, William Nylander, another great option. Or maybe he'll go to Florida. Florida loses, and we'll see him alongside Alexander Barkov and Jonathan Huberdeau. So in true NHL fashion, of course, this means that now there has to be another draft lottery. First, why the NHL cannot just hold this after the play-in makes no sense to me. So now there's another draft lottery after the play-in round to determine which of these losers of the play-in series will have the chance to draft Alexis Lafreniere, and they'll have a 12.5% chance. And the to-be-determined placeholder team only had a 2% chance of winning, and they won. So total chaos. Further to this point, just to add to the chaos, is the fact that the NHL Players Association has only agreed on the format. They have not actually agreed to return to play. So just to make matters worse, there might not even be a season because, it's the NHL. Meanwhile, the NBA has already released its schedule, and the NHL can't even figure its draft lottery out. So in the marketplace, in terms of hockey today, it's really just about the lack of consistency of the NHL and just how we know who the first overall draft pick is going to be, and we know he's a superstar franchise player, Alexis Lafreniere, 2-time CHL Player of the Year, but we don't know where he's going, which at this point is completely unprecedented. So that's kind of the marketplace situation for hockey this week, which is not, it's always funny. And I did talk last time I did the marketplace about how I might thought the Pittsburgh Penguins might trade Matt Murray because he had followed a lot of the players and the team on Instagram. The head coach, Mike Sullivan, has come out and said they'll probably start with Matt Murray to start the play-in because even though he has had a bad season, he has the play-in experience and the playoff experience, unlike Tristan Jarry, who's been the starter this season. So maybe that means they won't trade Matt Murray if he plays well and they go far and maybe win another Stanley Cup. So that could throw a wrench in the plans too. So maybe they will end up losing him to Seattle anyways, but maybe he won't be heat treated. So that's kind of interesting to watch as well, is that really you never know. You never know with sports. You never know with hockey and these rumors and who's going to be traded and who's going to be not traded on any given day. And in terms of moving on to soccer, so something that I saw that was interesting yesterday was that the manager of Manchester City, Liverpool's arch rival, one of their arch rivals, Pep Guardiola, has mentioned that he's not committing to his contract with the team past 2021, which is where it currently runs out. this is interesting to note because Manchester City has currently been banned from Champions League for 2 years for violating fair play. Now they are appealing this, but if they do end up losing the fair play violation, that means that they cannot be in Champions League for 2 seasons. And a lot of the players are getting old anyways, like Sergio Aguero. Kevin De Bruyne is not old, but he's injury prone, and they could still leave because the whole reason why you want to play for a team like Manchester City is to win a Champions League. They've already won 2 Premier Leagues. They haven't won a Champions League yet. So if they're going to be banned for 2 seasons, a lot of these players could leave, and that could open the door for Pep Guardiola to leave as well. Because if these players are not going to be there, he probably doesn't want to take on a rebuilding team at this point in his career because he wants to be a contender. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on to see what happens with that case, if they end up getting the appeal or not. I would definitely watch out for that because it really could kind of shift not only that team, but it could really shift the balance of power in the Premier League. If there's a mass exodus of players from Manchester City, it could really mean that team's no longer a contender, which could be very interesting and good for other fans of other teams. So that's something else I think that we should keep our eye on. And that's really all for the marketplace this week.
All right. Well done, Rachel. That was really good.
Thank you.
I definitely think there might be a few more things next week, hopefully, that can be more, marketplace related. But let's move on to our favorite segment, the always final segment. And this is the segment, Ranting with Rachel. Patented by me. No, I'm kidding. It's not patented. Ranting with Rachel. So how this works, viewers, is that I will give Rachel 5 minutes to talk about one particular topic that really messes her up, that grinds her gears, that just drives her crazy. And the topic today is the Hockey Hall of Fame inductees, including who wasn't included in the Hockey Hall of Fame inductees, particularly iconic Russian player Alexander Mogilny. And Rachel, go.
All right. Thank you very much, Charlie. So, yes, the NHL announced its 2020 Hall of Fame inductee class last Wednesday. So, whatever, I guess that was June 23rd, June 24th, last Wednesday. And the NHL, for the 12th year in a row, passed over Alexander Mogilny. Now, Toronto Maple Leafs fans will be familiar with this name because at the end of his career, he did play on a line with Matt Sundin, and he tore it up with Matt Sundin, and he actually led the team in points a couple times, but despite being on a line with Matt Sundin, who was a first ballot Hall of Famer. And just looking from a purely number standpoint, Alexander Mogilny has a better points per game average than Matt Sundin. It's pretty close, but his is a bit better, and he's played fewer games as well. I believe he didn't even play 1,000 games in the NHL. He had injury problems, and I think he's got at 1.84 points per game, which is almost 1.1 points per game. So that's very good. Not to mention he played a lot of his career in the 90s, which was the dead puck era. This was the era of the New Jersey Devils just playing in the trap game and winning games 2-1, 1-0, etc. He had one season where he scored 76 goals, which is absolutely ridiculous. Again, in the 90s trap era when goals were very hard to come by. I believe he had one or two more seasons of 50 goals, and I think 2 or 3 seasons of 30 plus goals. So this guy was a goal scorer. He would have had more goals again if he was not so injury prone. He didn't really play a full 82 game season or a full season. It was different games at that point for many years. So he's a great player. He was an elite player. He's an elite scorer, and he's won a Stanley Cup, which is usually something the Hockey Hall of Fame loves. He won a Stanley Cup with Buffalo. Usually if you win a Stanley Cup, you're automatically a shoe-in to the NHL. But into the Hockey Hall of Fame, sorry. But he's not been inducted. He's been waiting for 12 years when someone like Paul Kariya, who is also a fantastic player and is in the Hockey Hall of Fame himself, he was inducted in 2017. But Mogilny actually has better numbers than Paul Kariya in fewer games. So he's got a better points per game percentage than Paul Kariya in terms of points, but he's not in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and Paul Kariya is. So that's just completely ridiculous. And he's not only should he be in for his skill alone, you could argue he could be in for what he's done as a builder in terms of bringing Russians to the NHL. In 1989, when he was with the Soviet Union Red Army hockey team at the World Championships in Stockholm, Sweden, he did not fly back with the team to Russia. In fact, he stayed in Stockholm because he had been getting talked. Buffalo Sabres were really interested in him, but at that point, there were no Russians in the NHL, no Soviets as it was at the time. So his agent and the Buffalo Sabres flew to Stockholm. He hid out in Stockholm in his hotel for a couple days, and basically fearing for his life because the Russians were going to come after him. The KGB might have been after him at one point. The Soviets were going to try to come after him because he defected from the Soviet Union at a time when nobody was defecting. The NHL at that point was all Swedes, Finns, and North American players pretty much for the most point. And he really ushered in the wave of Russian players. We talk about the Russian 5 that played for Detroit in the early 90s. There would have been no Russian 5 that played for the Detroit Red Wings if there was no Buffalo 1 because of Alexander Mogilny. So he not only was a fantastic player on the ice, but the way he grew the game for Russians, and he was the first player to defect from the Soviet Union. And that meant that when he went to the NHL, and he finally did defect, and he went in 1989, the Soviet Union was almost fallen, but he couldn't go back to Russia. He couldn't play for the team for a couple of years. And because he had defected from his country, he has now been back in Russia and the situation's fine, but you should argue he should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame for being a builder alone, just because of what he did for Russian hockey players and really for the Soviet Union and for growing the game for Russians. And we might not have all these Russians in the NHL if it was not for Alexander Mogilny. And that's why he should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame, not to mention his on-ice prowess.
And that is time. Not bad, Rachel. I totally agree with you. It's kind of a travesty that he's not in the Hockey Hall of Fame, but players like Paul Kariya, who's also amazing, of course, Matt Sundin.
Mm-hmm.
Funny enough, Bob Gainey,
Kevin Lowe, who just got inducted.
That's right. Really hitting the old boys club here.
Yes.
And they're not really picking Alexander Mogilny, which is just crazy.
I saw something on Twitter where it is the Hockey Hall of Friends of the Selection Committee, which is very apt for the reason why I think Kevin Lowe is inducted, because no slight against Kevin Lowe, but he was not some elite player, and he definitely should not be going in before Alexander Mogilny. So, you said, it's really the old boys club for sure.
Definitely. And on that bombshell, it is time to end. Thank you very much tonight. Hope to see you next week.
Thanks again.